I see.
Right? I am it's accurate. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is your friendly neighborhood IT girl Sierra here with an awesome guest. So we have Vihan Chelliah, the king of productivity. Would you like to introduce yourself now?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm so glad that we're here. We're going to do a little discussion about some fun stuff. But my name is Vihan. I've been running a YouTube channel for several years now. It's been growing pretty well. Lots of cool productivity stuff that I like to use in my own life. Sometimes I struggle with like managing my calendar, managing my schedule, but figuring out a real and effective and efficient way to approach it is challenging for many people, and I kind of wanted to do a lot of research and then make videos about it. So that's my channel. Yeah.
And it's an amazing channel. You guys should all check it out. And you guys ask me a lot about productivity hacks and study hacks, and I never have answers for you. So I brought in an expert. Here we go.
Give it a try.
Right?
So the first thing that I want to bring up is a really cool technique. This is from the mid-20th century by a quantum electromagnetic physicist. All right, so he worked in electrodynamics. His name is Dr. Richard Feynman, and he created this amazing technique called the Feynman Technique. Do you know about it?
I do.
All right. So the Feynman Technique is really cool because what it essentially does is it helps you simplify stuff that you're learning about. Mm-hmm. And typically what we try to do is we get into all the nitty-gritty about stuff that we're learning. We want to learn all the fine details because we think that when we cover everything, we've learned everything, that we know it all. But the trick here, and what he did, and he was known as the great explainer, his approach was to use concise language, simple language, and in a concise format. And so essentially what you do if you're using the Feynman technique is when you've learned a subject or you've learned a topic, what you're doing is you're trying to explain it to somebody, which we typically don't do when we're learning or we're studying. We're learning, we're reading our textbook, we're going over it again and again, but we never really take the time to bother to explain to somebody. The switch here is you kind of have to try to explain it to maybe a child, or you explain to yourself like you were a child and you had no idea of what you're talking about. And that way you kind of use that simple language and you use concise understanding about it. When you're doing that, you get to use your brain in a way where you act as if you never knew it at all, and then you test yourself that way. So it's really cool. I mean, I think it's a good way to understand gaps in your own understanding about information or subject, and you kind of get to break it down for yourself. And if there are gaps, you get to revisit it, study it again, and then explain it to yourself again. That's a way of testing also.
I think it is really cool.
You'd heard about it before.
I had heard about it before.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because like I said, I was just like, this is what I naturally do. I just try and explain stuff to people in concise terms.
Yeah.
And I was looking up, like I said, they want to know about how to learn things, and I'm like, okay, well, let me look it up and see how I can explain this and articulate it. You articulated it way better than I ever could. But yeah, so that's how I found out about it. I was just trying to figure out stuff. Yeah,
and a lot of these techniques you're going to find when we keep discussing at least the stuff that I'm going to be talking about. Mm-hmm. I think that some of these techniques permeate into the other ones also as processes and ways to approach the other techniques that I'm going to talk about. So they're all kind of linked in a way.
Ooh, I love it. Interrelated, guys. So again, taking the Feynman technique into account, it'll be part of how you're going to learn this, how we're going to go through this actual process. Cool. So the one that I want to bring to the table is building off of the Feynman technique a little bit. It's called the storytelling technique, where basically you take, say you're learning something, but you take it in story bits instead. So if you're trying to learn maybe things about a printer, you're going to make a story about it. So you can say, oh my God, my boss needed to have the cartridge changed, but to do that, he needed to clean the printer head before he needed to do that. And then after that, there was a paper jam, and how do I get the paper jam out of the roller? So it's like, random storybook that we mentioned. Because we started, it was the boss needed the cartridge changed, and he got he went in there and had the printer head he needed to clean because he needed to change the cartridge. And then additionally, he had a paper jam that got stuck in the roller. So that was like a storyline to help memorize some of the pieces of the printer.
So it's kind of connecting a bunch of things?
Connecting things with a through line so that you tell the story. And it's like the story makes you remember, so you overall remember the whole, but it's slightly different than a Feynman technique. So you are focusing on the details so that you make it a whole.
I see.
You know?
I see.
This is why I brought you in here, though, because you're more articulate and you can say stuff better.
No, it's just like, I mean, there are so many different concepts that we don't hear about, and I think, like, when you, part of this is really insightful, because when you connect stuff, you will find like a certain part of something new that you're learning connects to something that you're more familiar with, and that can help you know, as like an inside track into more and more info.
Yes, true.
My second one here that I'm going to bring up is called active recall.
Okay.
Okay, so active recall is a very simple idea. More than a technique as such, it's an idea that kind of shifts the way that we approach study. So the first thing that you kind of have to do, obviously, is you review your materials, because you can't recall what you haven't reviewed or you don't know. So the first step is you actually study your stuff. And the second step, while it might sound a little trite, is recalling what you reviewed. Now, the reason why this is different and interesting is because typically when we study, we're reading, and we're studying. But the point of recall is to force your brain to recall information that you have studied before. And oftentimes when we're revising or we're studying, we realize, I don't remember what I read. So then you immediately go back to your notes, so you go back to your textbook. But it might seem challenging, it might seem difficult, but a part of your brain, deep down, you kind of do know some of those concepts. And if you pushed it out of your brain, if you like took the time, it might seem really stressful, but like if you pushed your brain to recall what you studied, it can help convert what you studied from your short-term memory to your long-term memory, because you were able to tap into that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And that's the whole idea of active recall, you know, because there are so many different ways to study and revise, but like it's one of my favorites, because you kind of like take the focus off of ingesting that new information to actually like revising and testing yourself.
Yes.
And that's the whole part of it, is just testing yourself. Same with the Feynman technique, where you're testing yourself by explaining it. This is a recall information where you're testing what you do remember.
You literally just changed my life, because so I went to WGU, Western Governors University. That's how most people here know me. But that was one of the things that they gave us a little whiteboard. That's part of the thing. You get a little whiteboard, and you're supposed to study with it. And so I would use that and then try and quiz myself, you know, to do quizzes or whatever. And I didn't realize there was like a name for that, but I guess it's called.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that's been done about this. I mean, papers have been published. It's called the psychological testing effect. And in academia and in study, when we do test ourselves, it's about like creating new neural pathways in our brains for information that we now can recognize, as opposed to just being something that we're studying, but we recognize it more as a fact or as a long-term memory.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I love that. And to jump off of your active recall and learning all about that, for mine, we have some dry erase note cards here, which you can actively use for your active recall. And basically, like I said, before I was using a whiteboard, like just a little mini whiteboard. But these are even more handy.
Perfect. Helpful. That you seem like you're all up in that flashcard life as well.
I love flashcards.
I got my flashcards here as well. See, these are some flashcards. You got some flashcards here. It really changes your life.
They're super useful. So I love doing stuff like this, because you can use active recall, which I now know is called that, and you just test yourself. You can write it on here. Thank you so much. So these ones are extra large also, and they're super useful because it's just a little dry erase marker, and you can reuse them all the time, so you never have to buy new.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm not saying.
Oh, so you like the dry erase one? I'm all about that lined, ruled line.
Well, my writing is a little serial killer, so it's like
so it's good, you know, so there's no permanent fixture there.
No permanent fixture here, so it's like, well, I mean, I guess it would be anyway, so my writing's gonna stay the same, but it's useful in terms of like if you're
but nobody will have to see it, because you can draw.
Nobody will know. They will not have to know. It's just for me and my craziness.
As I mentioned earlier in our little chat here, many of these techniques are all interlinked, and you saw how the Feynman technique plays into active recall as well. The third one is called spatial repetition. And this is all evidence-based. A lot of research has been done about it, but it's an evidence-based study technique that really emphasizes revision and review at specific intervals of time. So the main idea here is to leave specific intervals and revisit the information that you are learning or studying. Because typically, and this is something that was researched by a professor in, again, like the mid 20th century, where when we learn a piece of info, it follows what he called a forgetting curve. And the forgetting curve is when we first encounter a piece of info, it drops off and then tapers off and decays eventually until we eventually forget it. However, the way to hack that and to counter that is to revisit that piece of info at specific intervals over time, and then we re-encounter that info, and then it again comes back into our mind, as opposed to something we just learned once and then tapers off.
Interesting.
Yeah. And this is an effect that's called the spacing effect, also, where information decays in the brain, and the fastest drop off is actually within half an hour of first learning something. So if I just told you a random fact, it's quite possible that in about an hour you would not really remember a whole lot about it, particularly if you weren't interested in it or you weren't paying close attention to it.
Literally.
And that's called the spacing effect, yes. So the way to approach space repetition is to really approach your study with specific interval. We were talking about the capital of Australia being Canberra, Canberra, I think.
Okay.
Now, if I just told you that, you were likely to maybe forget it in about a day or a week or whatever. But if you saw a map of Australia and it said the capital of Australia is Canberra, or you saw, an ad come to Canberra, or you saw pictures of it, and you were constantly exposed to it, as opposed to me just giving you a random piece of info, it would become a fact that you just knew and encountered in your life.
It's true.
And that's what space repetition is. You're re-encountering information so that it goes again from short-term to long-term memory, and you can recall it easily. One of the best ways to approach space repetition is flashcards. Again, where you're just writing it down, you're encountering it again, you'll see it. Maybe you could draw pictures, icons, not just words. There are also apps where you can use flashcards as well. Anki is an app, A-N-K-I. Anki, where you can customize your flashcards in ways that you prefer.
Love that.
And again, just another way of re-encountering that info.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, guys, look at that. Learned so much today. Canberra.
G'day. Welcome to Canberra. Cheers for being here.
Do it again.
Right. Lovely work. I think my accent is now going off. You're gonna lose the Australian audience here.
It's alright, would you like some shrimp on the barbie?
Alright. There's prawns on the barbie. There's no shrimp out there in Australia. No shrimp out there in Australia. Yeah, well, I just wanted to kind of caveat the whole thing with saying that, study is typically approached as a very passive way, where we read something and we hope to God and we hope to all of our sources that we can recall something. But you really do have to push yourself sometimes. You got to test yourself. You got to see gaps in your knowledge, and you got to really understand what your shortcomings are in memory, even. And certain techniques, certain approaches can help you hack that. And that's what we're talking about, and I hope that really helps folks out here.
I agree.
And let us know if this works. Try it out for some of your tests.
Definitely.
And
drop down in the comments. Let us know what your favorite study technique is, or if you're going to take any of these into account and try them out. We want to hear from you, all of yous.
Alright guys, well thank you so much. I hope all of those things work really, really well for you. Don't forget to follow Vihan. Check out all of his stuff down in the bio. Thank you so much for being here.
Info cards, comment, like, subscribe.
Yeah, I always forget. Love it. Love to see you. Thanks for joining us. We love you so much. Bye.